Thank you so much.
Hi, Peter.
Um, hey, Money. All right, I think we are live. Let me just get started. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening for all those who have joined across the globe today for the first series of Let's Rise with Tech, reimagining industrial manufacturing for the future. Just a quick introduction about myself, Prasanna Raghavendran, based out of Chicago here in the US, and I lead the transformation initiatives for manufacturing service line with a specific focus on modernizing legacy platforms, activating AI, and embedded resilience in IT and engineering systems. So today, there's been a paradigm shift in the recent years where the CEOs and IT leaders are just no longer focusing on keeping the lights on, and they are driving growth, automation, and innovation across the globe, right? So for the conversation today, it's not going to be a presentation. It's going to be more of a dialogue. It's going to be more of a dialogue purely focused on how the real industrial transformation is happening at the intersection of tech, operations, and leadership. Um, Sunil, I think you can turn the camera on. We are all okay. Perfect. I'm just, yeah, I can see Money.
Hello.
Peter on. Awesome. I see him coming up. Thank you, Peter. That's a lovely green shirt for a Monday morning.
Very suitable, eh?
I can imagine, right? So I think I was going to talk to you about some of the juggling complexities, and the green signal speaks about all of it, right? I mean, it
Yeah.
says we're all green. Again, the focus is going to be on how this aging tech, fragmented data, all the high cost pressures, at the same time, folks like you being asked to accelerate AI, digital twin, all the so-called buzzwords today have become the given, right? So to help us answer all that, folks out there, I have two incredible leaders joining me today. First, let me take the honor in welcoming Peter Alkema, who heads IS Technology and Platforms at ABB. Peter, more than just running IT, has been building a platform mindset for multiple decades. And this morning, I was just doing a little bit of a prep. I was so curious to actually run this tagline for ABB with this engineer to outrun. And I must say that you have been leading some world-class accelerate programs across industrial operations, living up to this tagline, right? So bringing factories together, flying to China in the morning, and then going into Poland in the afternoon, and so on. I really love that. And your contribution has been phenomenal, not just on the tech, but also for the tech society. For those who may not know, please look up. He is a recognized leader in Udemy. I look at him as my professor whenever I want to be looking up for some new tech. I go back to LinkedIn, and then whichever exams I've actually failed, I just go back to say, okay, let me probably get some mentorship from Peter's guidance, and then see if I can clear that up. And it's not just an understatement, I really mean it. Peter, thank you so much for joining us today.
That's an absolute pleasure, Manny. Thanks very much for your kind words and introduction to the session. Looking forward to having the dialogue. So critical and important. I think many organizations, teams, and leaders especially are grappling with all of these multiple priorities. And as you say, the new trends and
Did we lose Peter?
Hey,
Okay.
Peter, for a moment we lost you. I think you may have to repeat that, Peter.
all good. Just saying, we're all grappling with these competing priorities and needing to stay up to date with, as you say, the latest trends and buzzwords. and that's building the expectations with our business counterparts. So managing those expectations, bringing our teams with, and navigating a global landscape, which is often also difficult to predict, as you mentioned. And ABB having that sort of large-scale global footprint does require us to be present and involved and engaged, and very happy to sort of lift the lid a little bit and share a little bit of our strategy in ABB as to how we deal with these topics. So thanks very much for having me today.
Pleasure. I think you have already done some of the heavy lifting already. It's just about running the show right now. With that said, I also have Manikantan NS, as many of us know him as Money. Apparently, he's my boss, who serves as the Senior Vice President of Manufacturing Practice at Techem. And Money works with some of the most complex global manufacturers out there, helping them navigate modernizing legacy technology systems and getting them activated more so specifically on smart factory programs. And in the recent past, he has been having a keen focus on how you can transition most of them towards an AI-led operations, right? So what I admire about Money's approach, it's not just about the technology. He has always been focusing on bringing in the business value and how the transformation kind of actually sticks onto it, right? Beyond being a great thought leader, he has been a great ally, which truly has motivated many of us here at Tech and Money. Thank you so much. Lovely having you here today.
Thank you, Prasanna, and thank you, Peter, first for doing this with us. I think it's a great honor to be here on the same platform with you, and I really look forward to this engaging conversation today. And I know that this is just the beginning, and there's lots which we could do together. So thank you so much for your time and the opportunity with us.
Absolute
Awesome.
pleasure.
Thank you,
Thank
Money.
you. Good to engage.
Lovely, guys. Yeah. Just to set the tone, there are a few topics we would kind of want to have as an interactive session, covering some of the key topics on how IT has become a value driver. Um, and My camera is not visible. Okay. I
Now
didn't
we
know
see
that.
you.
That's not good. I think you're all able to see me now.
Yeah, we
Absolutely.
can go ahead.
Okay. So, like I said, I think there are a few topics which we will cover in the next 30 to 35 minutes, starting from how IT is kind of a value driver, especially in the industrial manufacturing space. And then we'll speak a little bit about some of the transformation across the value chain, and then slowly swivel into some of the key topics around digital thread, AI, and how modernization is actually helping apps and infrastructure. And then we will leave the floor open for the last 10 minutes for the folks to speak about or have their questions to be answered by the final end of this session. Is that okay?
Sounds good.
Awesome. Okay, let me start with this, right? So, what I have seen in the recent times, it's IT has kind of been more so beyond having uptime, cost control, right? I mean, especially in factory floor operations and industrial manufacturing, it's kind of now an enabler for some of these operations, and innovation is just a key thing to it. In ABB, especially the phenomenal list of use cases I was seeing in the Mexico Accelerator event, and there was a lot going on in the China as well, right? So you have been leading this change, balancing both legacy systems, bringing in the modernization aspects of it. At the same time, you have been having a focus on building resilience as well. Peter, would love to hear how you are looking at these shifts that are happening overall from a technology strategy perspective. And if you were to actually speak about how modern IT is kind of driving these outcomes, right? That will be lovely to hear from you.
Yeah, absolutely, Prasanna. So maybe just to frame it, many years ago, we always used to speak about this idea of two-speed IT. So we always had this competing tension between the expectation from business to, quote unquote, keep the lights on, but then also to drive, the transformation agenda. And the fact that we've got now AI and a whole set of new buzzwords, I don't think that's really fundamentally changed that core challenge that we've had. I think it's just put greater pressure on us as leaders And some of these topics around agility and the way that we manage that diverse landscape, it's brought it much more to the fore, and it's created even greater pressure now on us as leaders to manage those things. So again, we have to learn from history in order to deal with the future. And if you look back, in the IT world, we realized that the sort of plan-driven waterfall style approach to projects, needed evolution, right? And that's where we came up with the agile approach, and we recognized that requirements were going to change, and that we needed to put teams through, shorter work cycles so that they didn't have this expectation on a set of requirements that then we needed to protect and sort of govern and hold with a big stick. And I think, what I've seen happen is that agility has moved from primarily and largely a software engineering discipline to a little bit more of an organizational wide culture. And, we've always seen adoption of agile have mixed success. And what we've tried to do at ABB is make sure that it has that business participation in, and that you're not being agile for the sake of it. You've got very clear outcomes that you're looking to achieve. Now, coming back to, specifically the manufacturing environment, and where, ABB in a sort of more business to business world, needs to make sure that we work backwards from the customers and listen to their challenges and evolve our operations and our services and offerings to meet their requirements. And then, all the way back into the organization where we have the embedded IT organizations. And as you know from, ABB's culture, we have a fairly decentralized way of working, which has driven massive profitability in recent years, as we've, made sure that decision-making happens close to the business. They have that agility built in, to that decision-making operating model. And so IT in ABB needs to cater for not only that diversity of the decisions and the stakeholders, but then also, as you said, the expectation of the resiliency coming out of the core capabilities that need to just be available, security, networks, or hosting environments, whether they're on-prem or in the cloud, et cetera. And then within those, see the transformational topics, take off. So I started my career in ABB in architecture, and it was fantastic because architecture gives you that opportunity to sort of have a look at everything across the enterprise, understand the different value streams, understand the pain points, see where the need for deduplication and consolidation was the greatest, etc. And then I moved into my current role. So what was fantastic was I actually got introduced to the world of ABB, from that town planning sort of helicopter perspective. And when I went into operations, I made sure that I, stuck to those architectural roots, and then obviously had to deal with the operational frustrations in achieving that architectural vision, which is easy to put on paper, Prasanna and Manny, and relatively easy, I would say, to talk about from a consulting perspective, and very important that we have consultants like yourselves to help us on that journey. But then, and coming really to the crux of the answer to the question is, how do you execute? How do you make sure that you set teams up for success? And what we did was we created what we call the core platform accelerator. So we said, well, we have this architectural vision of our core capabilities, and we design those in a way that they can be orchestrated together. They're highly modularized, and we understand what our business requirements are and how we orchestrate end-to-end business value across one or more capabilities. But then we need a digital transformation framework, which we can then use to modernize across all those capabilities. And that was then the sort of discipline that we set up, and how we ensured that we balanced the architectural picture with the execution of it. And then what you've seen in China and Mexico that you referred to in your tee-up was, on top of that, the accelerator events, where we said, well, it's all well and good to have a vision of our core capabilities and how we want to modernize those. It's all well and good that we have a digital transformation framework, and we've all got the same research and the same insights and the same thought leadership. But the accelerators actually go into the factories, they go into the businesses, they go into the countries, and they say, let's listen and understand your business problems, and then let's create an event, a hackathon, a way of working that actually works backwards from those business problems. It brings the best of the core platform and the core capabilities to solve those business problems. But then it actually says, let's incentivize the collaboration and the coordination across these diverse teams to actually deliver on those business problems. And of course, it's always a mixed bag. Some of these land, some of them don't. What we're aiming for is that on average, from quarter to quarter, from year to year, we're increasing resilience, we're delivering value from our digital transformation framework, and we're demonstrating to the business that we're listening and we're engaged with them about the real problems that we're facing. So that's a little bit of an introduction from my perspective on how we're balancing all of those challenges and how that creates a vision and a vehicle, I think, for both business and IT teams to get on board and work together and deal with the ever-evolving and changing landscape. And the last point I would make is, to your topic of AI, AI has been around for years, and many, with your extensive experience, I'm sure we'll go into that. When you apply that thinking and those technologies into whether it's manufacturing or any other business, once again, it's about the use cases that pop up and which of those use cases does business then want to invest in and to back to drive value for us in one of three categories: your employees and the efficiency and the productivity they get from tools like generative AI, or your functional or what we call our common capabilities, whether it's a CRM capability, ERP, manufacturing, planning, etc., or in the third category, your services and offerings that are going out to customers. And consistently in the 5 accelerators that we've run in the 2 years that I've been at ABB, AI, data analytics has been a dominant category of use cases, which has confirmed for us the importance of doing it. But as you'll know from industry best practice, that funnel of all the fantastic ideas of what people want to do narrows fairly quickly when you think about, do we have the core capabilities to do it? Do we have the team set up in a successful way for them to be able to deliver on those promises? And thirdly, is that the most important things that business actually want to achieve from it? So Prasanna, hopefully that's sketched a little bit of the landscape that we're dealing with at ABB.
No, I mean, needless to say, right? I mean, it's been like a go-to template for all of us, Peter. Especially about the ways of working. You guys have actually evolved into, and the accelerate programs, and then you bringing in use cases from outside, bringing in the outside in perspective, right? So you can just democratize the whole thing by doing what you're doing. But if you're actually bringing in those industry use cases under the single roof and then making things happen, I mean, I've been coaching my teams or advising my teams to say that, okay, let's look up the way things have been worked on ABB and how people are actually looking up to it and how they are implementing it live with use cases that has been actually circulating, right? So that's one thing. And one more thing before that's kind of a good segue for me to go on to money. But before that, when are you releasing your next book on digital transformation, Peter?
Well, that's very kind of you, Prasanna. I don't have a book in the works. I think with the rapid pace of change, by the time you've committed anything to paper, when it gets into print or a digital format, good possibility is that it's almost obsolete. And this is the pace of change that we're all dealing with. You can read a blog from OpenAI on Monday, and then the CEO of Anthropic contradicts it by Friday, right? So this is the sort of tumultuous landscape that we're all being deeply thrust into. And on this topic of thought leadership, I mean, it's something that I counsel my teams is, to be very thorough in your reading and your attending of different conferences and the networks that you maintain and the people that you rely on for information. Because as much as there's those rapid cycles of creative destruction, there are some key principles that, you can look out and follow. So any future writing I would need to ensure is going to last longer than next week, Prasanna, and I'm not quite too sure yet what topic that is. But thank you. I did have a book on digital transformation. It has done reasonably well, but the more I go back to it and have a look at it, the more I realize it needs serious updating, like all of our literature.
So let's keep it as pre Open AI, the book you have written, versus post Open AI, and let's probably look into how the differences have been, and that kind of becomes as a self starter kit and an evolution of how AI modeling has come as a light for us, right? Fantastic, Peter. With that being said, I think you were talking about some of the key themes, right, on modernization, cloud, especially the stickiness with data, which is absolutely needed. That's emerging across the industry globally. And money has been working with some broad set of clients in manufacturing, especially on automotive and industrial, right? Helping them getting through this whole process of transformation itself. So, Money, I would like to ask you about these big shifts that are happening, and what kind of patterns are you seeing and that are emerging in the industry right now? Money, we can't hear you.
Yeah, see,
Yeah,
so firstly, like how Peter was describing about journey. Can you hear
yeah,
me
yeah.
now?
It's clear now.
Is it okay
Yeah.
now? Okay. Now, as he was describing about his journey within ABB and how they've been driving the transformation, within ABB, I think, I mean, similarly, pretty large customers, obviously start with the core purpose. I think that's a very common pattern what you see because they would really want to put the core purpose and the value. They would define it in terms of what they would want to do, and of course, the path which they would adopt to get there could be very different because every organization has a certain culture, has a certain method of working. And but I can tell you, Peter, seldom people take a very architectural view. It's always taken as a business process or kind of a use case type of a centric view. It's very heartening to see because that's probably the most preferred model when you actually go ahead and then look at it because you have a broad set of patterns which you would really be able to solve with. But I mean, in my experience, what I've really seen is that the customers do take, the value as the first step in terms of the definition, and then go behind as to how do we really get there. And of course, there are multiple approaches and patterns to it. And second is, the shift itself is fairly complex. Right, we're talking about any transformation by definition is painful. So I mean, and today we typically talk about what type of a framework you would adopt to get there, right? What type of an assessment would you do so that you really look at where you are, how do you really configure your journey, and then finally the transformation, which is more like an outcome. So those are the typical steps which you would want to take. But some of the macro trends being right, I mean, there has to be what I would call as a delicate balance between modernization and innovation. Today, a lot of people do confuse between innovation and modernization, but they are kind of little two different things. And while innovation could be an underlying theme for modernization, but there is a lot in terms of how do you really do the balancing, because end of the day you got to really focus on the value or what is the real ROI which the customer is going to experience, and that would come through multiple ways of doing it. It could just be your legacy modernization, it could just be your tech debt reductions, it could just be in terms of not just as a technology change but also as a process change, right? So where you really, that's an opportunity for the customers to really relook at their processes sometimes and kind of redefine. And what's really happened is with AI, we are seeing a pattern of customers fast forwarding from a typical what we call as a POC or a pilot to actually a full blown implementation. And I think that has become pretty common, whether you look at the shop floors, the smart factories. The smart factory defined frameworks are essentially coming into life. We see a lot more digital twins coming as a pattern. We see a lot of large scale cloud native based process transformations happening, whether it is in the area of supply chain, whether you talk about your own core business operations. And I think that platform implication, when they start adopting at large scale and with acceleration with AI, we see multiple patterns emerging out of it. But what is very common, and as he was rightly saying, is the real vision. I mean, you really got to have the clear vision. You really define the value, and it's more of a fit for purpose. It's not what you would want to do, what, let's say, the competition is doing, or probably what you would see as even in your related industry. but it's about what's really going to deliver the value for you as a business. And that's, I think, a very critical factor which most of our customers see. And third is technology is just an accelerator, but it is more the culture. And I think while we say, hey, there is a large scale technology led transformation across the value chain, but the real impact of that is the culture of the organization. And that's where these events would work, like what ABB is trying to do, right? You have these accelerators or hackathons type of events. It's more culture building, right? It's about bringing that whole synergy across the organization, and you're able to further accelerate it through what I would call as collaboration and celebration, because there's a lot of celebration happens when you see a real outcome. The teams are excited, bottoms up. You see that as a pattern as well. So, and organizations which do that well have really reap the benefits. And kind of that also, it's not like then a top down approach or a bottom up approach. It's about everybody in unison is working towards that one single unified vision and value. And I think that's the true pattern. I think large scale customers, especially in the Fortune 100, Fortune 500 base, are all somewhere in that journey. Obviously, everybody have their own curve. Some are a little ahead, some are a little behind. And I think we as practitioners, we as partners, kind of come and support and help our customers to say, hey, what could be the possible way to do it? What are the possible risks which they could avoid? How do we really build the culture? And how do we really, kind of even help in those acceleration? And I think that is where, we come in and play a very critical role there. Prasanna.
Fantastic. I think that was a clear summary, Mani, right? As a matter of fact, when you were talking about the hackathon, it kind of reminded me that I couldn't really make it to China, Peter. But the number of feeds I was looking on in LinkedIn kind of was helping me really visualize how robotic automation, especially in the electrification business, can actually be imagined, right? It's just no more an imagination. It's happening right there, right now, right? And last week, we were having a conversation with one of the large enterprise customers. I mean, I don't mind letting them know about it. It's BASF, and we kind of had a very peculiar request to bring in ABC automation, robotic automation into their research and development, right? And it's going to be a phenomenal partnership we are going to have, bringing in the robo side of the world into BASF, right? So I'll keep you posted about it. I thought I'll probably let you know, and we are really thrilled to know about it. Now, kind of moving on, it's more about the digital thread and the smart operations, right? Especially given the fact about how shop floors are actually reacting to business. What kind of is my voice audible? I kind of hear a muffle.
Yep, loud and clear.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah,
So
it's clear now.
yeah, so there is a significant emphasis on how data is kind of becoming the heart of the whole modern industrial enterprises, right? Having a clear linkage on your production systems and also the enterprise layer, which kind of encompasses it, right? So when it gets to operational mode, and especially when AI-driven insights are actually driving this operationalizing of all of these, right? Including your predictive maintenance and decision-making capability. Peter, what's your perspective in kind of enabling this digital thread? And what's your outlook on scaling AI into the overall operations, especially with your warehouse systems and shop floor systems and so on? I would love to hear about that, please.
Yeah, Prasanna, I mean, that's a wide area of topics. So let's just sort of break it down a little bit. I mean, the first one that you mentioned, the digital thread, is this idea that, you might have best of breed solutions, for, as you say, the different stages from R&D through to planning to manufacturing. And that if you don't maintain, sufficient lineage of that data and normalization of those data models, your ability to, number one, get the right insights out of that flow of value and to continually improve and refine that value chain is going to be limited. And second of all, if you don't get that integration correct, then your quality is potentially going to be a challenge. So any large organization with a diverse systems landscape has got to ensure, as you say, sufficient golden thread or management of critical quality impacting information all the way through from the laboratory to your customers' shop floor, which is ultimately where most of our products will end up. So there are some basics there, and I think AI, has just surfaced some of those issues. Gartner is pretty clear that less than 4% of organizations' data is actually ready for AI. But my perspective would be, having visited a number of our factories, that we actually don't need to make it more complex than it is. The real struggles that the factories are facing is often just throughput on their floor, uptime of their manufacturing lines, and refinements to products that customers have requested, especially when it's made to order, right? So when you've got highly repetitive, repeated industrial manufacturing flows, it's a bit easier to engineer out the defects and then set up a manufacturing line for repeatability. Where you've got slightly more customization in your flow, that's, I think, where you have a little bit more of a challenge with the data issues that you mentioned. And if I could just talk about a couple of the use cases that I've seen come through the accelerators, and then very interestingly see actually emerge on the shop floor, which is exactly what we've been trying to accomplish. A lot of it is, for example, using vision computing for quality control and inspection of parts as they go through different stages of the manufacturing process. And actually there, you don't want too much enterprise architecture thinking. So it might contradict what I was saying earlier. You actually want a lot of agility in those local teams, being able to set up applications to quickly analyze the data coming from that flow and feed it right back into the shop floor technician, the industrial engineer, that's laying out the floor, etc. And automation obviously has a side effect of improving efficiency and reducing costs and improving quality. So where I've seen those cycles have the best results is where we, as, let's say, supporting corporate centralized functions, can set factories up, to be highly nimble and to have the tooling that they need because they actually know best the problems that they need to solve. So coming back to the theme of the core platform, we're very certain on what are the commoditized services that those capabilities need to provide, and the environment within which those application development teams, working closely with those factory and shop floor quality control teams, what conditions and services and commoditized value propositions we can provide to them that are highly self-service, highly intelligent, highly automated. If those teams, have to go through a lot of governance and processes just to source what they need from inside the organization, then they're spending all their time on that manual work, as opposed to spending the bulk of their time on the problem solving that they know best in their environment. And when it comes to robotics specifically, another big uptake that we've seen, and I've witnessed, for example, in our Auburn Hills factory in the USA, almost a quarter of the factory floor space is dedicated to training customers who come in, and you can go in as a customer and have a look at our robots and then learn how to interact with them, to train them to do the work that you need them to automate on your factory floor. And AI and vision computing and the ability to understand your world as a robot through that vision computing capability is definitely changing the robotics manufacturing landscape. So we launched OmniCore last year, which was a big upgrade to our robotics technology platform. And now what I've seen coming through is very much more the use of AI in the training and the optimization of the flow of the robot to do the work on the product or as part of the manufacturing flow that you've designed for it. So that would be a couple of thoughts, Prasanna. I guess the last point to make is that if you step back from the factories and you look at the broader organizational strategic planning, that's very necessary. Having that normalized set of data across your organization, improves your ability to analyze and to get decision insights. Okay, because when you need to make big investment decisions, do I put a factory in this country, or do I onshore my supply chain to reduce geopolitical risk, etc.? All of those large-scale investment decisions rely on a vast source of data. And the promise of generative AI is that it can learn and it can amass a lot of insights from that information and then bring it together to answer those questions very specifically. Now, you have to triangulate, you have to confirm, you have to validate data. But again, the cycle of investment decision making is getting shorter as AI, starts to work through and solve for a lot of those data issues. And we ran a metaverse panel from Shanghai during the recent accelerator. And at the end, we were asked for our predictions. And one of my predictions was that 4% of organizations whose data is ready for AI is going to become irrelevant, because the ability to orchestrate agents, that will actually learn the organization's unique data landscape and then harmonize that data and shortcut through a lot of our, ingestion processes all the way through to the publication of data products, is again where the next stage of creative destruction is going to go into. And IT has been talking about data governance and data classification for 20 years. We haven't got it right. I think we must be honest about that. It's only when the AI use case comes along and suddenly the CEO can chat to the organization's data that you actually get the critical mass of focus on the topic. So Prasanna, at a factory manufacturing level, at an organizational strategic level, that should be a couple of high-level thoughts from my perspective on your question.
Amazing. I mean, as you were telling me that, right? Especially AI kind of getting beaten to death, and it's like a overnight thing which happened. I could still imagine. I go into AWS conference reInvent 2023, and then 2024. I mean, there was just a little bit of AI being spoken about. 2024, I go to Google I/O event in April. All the booths were just about AI, right? Especially with industrial manufacturing, people bringing in robots and so on. And with your specific point on the way the kind of things have evolved, you could as well live just with the powerful vision tools what you have in the market within ABB from a product perspective, and also the 3D programming, which actually kind of goes into your Robo Studio, which gets materialized when it comes to the shop floor and then to the end customers. But it can also get extended all the way. I mean, again, metaverse, you have witnessed it live. I only saw it on LinkedIn. It was so crazy. But I can really imagine the amount of data that can be uh, amassed the way you said, and what kind of outputs the CEO can actually bring onto the table, right? So that kind of is going to let me have a tricky question for money, right? With all this vision being there, money, you can skip it, but I would love for you to answer. But what if 80% of the shop floor is going to be autonomous? What do you think needs to be truly enabled to getting there? What do you think?
No, I think that's a very powerful vision, right? I mean, and I agree with Peter. I mean, there's so many of those building blocks which they have kind of gone through, and they've incrementally done that. And if you really see, I mean, it's going to be real. 60 to 80% of, and I'm an eternal optimist, Peter. So I would assume that 60 to 80% of the operations would be autonomous in the next 5 years for sure, in most of the factories or manufacturers, because I think. The market forces are going to compel them. The compute, the pace at which the compute capability is building. I mean, you look at it, the edge intelligence is going to be pretty growing, Prasanna, which means your IT/OT convergence with edge intelligence is going to be the driving factor for some of these. So, the core asset manufacturers are going to become more and more building more and more intelligent assets. I mean, look at what ABB is doing. They're putting in a lot more AI power to their robots. And imagine that in a factory setup where you're going to have them seamlessly talking to other equipment, seamlessly talking to each other, and seamlessly coexisting with the human worker. So if that's going to happen, so obviously a lot of that convergence is going to happen. Second is obviously these the whole digital thread is going to be a lot more contextual, because your data flows now would be far more organized, or far more even if they're disorganized. I think the agents are going to become a lot more powerful to organize your data in such a way so that your flows are a lot more meaningful, which means a lot of contextual data flows are going to happen in the context of digital threads. That would span across not just design, but production, supply chain, and we're really seeing it, right? When you look at a large OEM, especially like an auto OEM, we are seeing the actual feedback loop being closed with real-time feedback going into the design phase of the next generation product, which means your product lab, the life cycle to build a product is actually coming down faster. What used to take maybe 36 months, today you're able to do it in 6 months, because the whole feedback loop is kind of so autonomous. And so that's how I would assume the autonomous workflows are going to happen. It's not just the machinery alone. I would think the decision making will be a lot more autonomous. I think that is where the real excitement is, right? You would see that AI agents today monitoring conditions, triggering actions, um, learning from the outcome. So you're going to have data models, which are whether it is SLM, LLM, depending upon how you implement it. I think there'll be a lot of learning from the outcomes. And so think autonomous in every stage, right? Whether it is quality control, whether it is predictive maintenance, whether it is dynamic scheduling, all of that is going to happen. And the beauty is that today we are helping some of our customers in those, right? How do we really put those frameworks in place? As part of our smart factory services, that's exactly what we do. We're really helping our customers envision this future and say, okay, how do you really have software defined factories? I mean, how do you really going to have, it's not just any longer a theory or just a white paper or a blog, but today you're seeing it. I mean, I know a German manufacturer who's actually running a virtual factory for the last 3.5 months before the actual factory is going to be commissioned. So they are talking about a full scale factory being run virtually in all of its operations, so they can know exactly from the raw material to the scheduling to the production to the quality control to the end product coming out. And probably thousands and thousands of simulations are running, and it's all done virtually. They want to fine tune that as much as possible before they actually go ahead and even do the real commissioning. Now what's going to happen is it's going to accelerate your commissioning process. There used to be a time when people would actually go into the commissioning activity literally with a pen and paper. And today what's really happening is you could with the help of AI and with so much of technology and compute available on tap, our customers are able to reimagine this whole thing. And that's why some of these partnerships which we see, there's a reason why NVIDIA is partnering with Siemens, right? There's a reason why they went and acquired a company like Altair. I mean, so that's kind of the trend. And it's not just Siemens, right? I'm sure Rockwell is doing something on their own. There are any other major industrial automation player. Look at what Google is doing with Intrinsic's flow state, like what Peter was talking about. The whole flow state is all about putting whole of AI in your robotic motion planning. Now how are you going to do that, and how seamlessly it can be done? So the future for me, I would say, more autonomous in the next, I would say 3 to 5 years. It would obviously mean large scale adoption. I mean, I think Tesla has really challenged the automotive sector, right? I mean, 40 seconds every car coming out, which is kind of unheard of in the industry. And if they can do that, I'm sure every manufacturer is trying to do. Look at what BYD has done. Look at what some of the other OEMs are primarily compelled to do then. And it's just, automotive is not just one sector. I mean, every sector is going to go through that. Every sector is going to primarily look at vertical integration from a manufacturing perspective, so that they're able to do things faster, better, cheaper. And that's going to only drive the industry, I would say, more and more autonomous. The sci-fi movies which we saw in the past, let's say 5 years ago, with the humanoids working, is real. So it's coming. It's happening now as we speak. I think while a lot of our customers may think, hey, it's maybe next 10 years, I would say, because of the acceleration of AI, a lot of these things are further getting accelerated. So the applications are going to be furthermore accelerated on the ground. So it's now and it's happening. And short answer is autonomous next 5 years.
Thank you, Mani. I think I kind of had. Sorry, Peter, go ahead.
No, I wanted to build on some of those great points that you made, Manny, but let me do that as part of the next question, Prasanna.
I kind of had some mixed emotion when he started off with the number of visits he was going to assign me to do with respect to factory floor and so on. And then later part of his conversation was more about the German manufacturer having that virtual shop floor from start to commission, right? That kind of eased me a little bit, right? Okay, I'm not going to have crazy travels this year. At the same time, humanoids getting into operations, really thrilled. But Peter, if you have a few things to quote, happy to hear from you on that.
Absolutely, and I'm glad you raised the Siemens NVIDIA Altair sort of three-way partnership, and it's public knowledge, but that was a $10 billion investment into that digital twinning software capability. With then, as you mentioned, the compute coming from NVIDIA's obviously very well-known AI servers. And just to unpack that a little bit, I mean, and for those of you that have watched that interview between the Siemens CEO and the CEO of NVIDIA and the demo that they showed, the whole idea is that we move to these sort of hyper-realistic virtual simulations of the factory floor. And the theoretical modelers of the world will argue that we've been doing that for ages. I mean, we're able to model theoretical conveyor belts, and we've done industrial engineering optimization for decades. The difference now is the experience of that, which the vision computing capabilities give us. Whereas previously it was only limited to a narrow band of engineering technical people that could understand the models behind that simulation. The physical representation of the real world brings the upstream and the downstream stakeholders into that. And you mentioned, Manny, that your commissioning cycles get quicker. So especially made to order products, your customers can then define that, and you can run those simulations through that without any cost, because obviously you've invested in the computing, but the more that you run through that process, the more and the quicker that you pay it off. And a customer then doesn't need to understand the technical models, and you don't need to have layers of people then running those and interpreting them. They can actually physically see it as you go through it. So one good example is you talk about auto manufacturers is, let's now think a decade ahead, and we swap out the battery at the moment with a hydrogen fuel cell, right? What is the reconfiguration and the retooling on the factory floor? So that downstream impact, that awareness from the customer perspective of the variability and the cost impacts of their requirements on the products, really opens up a whole set of possibilities. And then the upstream topic, the R&D and the planning, and the ability that gives you then to optimize the flow for the lowest cost, highest quality output in your factory floor with that hyper-realistic virtual simulation. It takes your factory floor optimization to the next level. And there are so many permutations of how that can play out. And as you say, with AI then giving you, through prompt engineering, the ability to start sending the investment in that simulation into the right direction, also adds, a layer of accessibility, whether it's from marketing, from, as I said, research and design, from any part of the enterprise organization, to have almost factory as a service, as a simulated service. And if you look at fast-moving consumer goods, if you look at any sector, what Siemens has done, while it's a big investment, I think, as you correctly pointed out, there is going to be a greater need for that in the future. I think there are still the skeptics that say, well, as I mentioned, we've been doing that, but what they're not factoring in is the inclusive nature that experience of the factory floor is made available now through the investments that you spoke about just now. Yeah. And what's very important, you spoke about autonomous vehicles. A lot of people don't realize this, but Tesla's entire architecture is based on vision computing. So they have actually cameras around all the vehicles to build up a virtual simulation of the world around them, and then they learn from that world how to navigate. Now, obviously, that's not so good in darkness or in bad weather, whereas the vast majority of other EVs are based on radar technology. So they have sensors and they build a simulation of it on the computer. And it's going to be really interesting to see, because you've got this mathematical modeling that can, in theory, get to the same answer versus the actual representation of the physical world, and which then, sort of gives the better results, the better learning insights about the world around you. And like you mentioned, Prasanna, whether it's now EVs, autonomous taxis and vehicles on the road, or whether it's humanoids coming alongside human workers in the factory, to lift boxes, pack shelves, and to drill into products on the factory floor, that ability to go from the learning and the insights from the customer feedback and feed that all the way through into the simulation of that flow from the start is really going to shake up and disrupt many industries in the years to come.
Absolutely. And that's why, Peter, what we're really doing is we're calling it the adaptive manufacturing from our side. So what we're really saying is that how do you really make, as a manufacturer, how are you going to become a lot more adaptive, irrespective of whether whatever, you're manufacturing, could be a car, it could be an industrial equipment, you could be in the process, you could be a construction, metals, mining, whatever it is. We're really saying, and how are you really going to make your value chain more efficient? Because end of the day, whatever technology you throw in, the fundamental principle is that are you really making your value chain more efficient? And that's what is going to help you survive and thrive at marketplace, because the market is going to change. And this will help you to become a lot more resilient, a lot more agile to these changes which are happening to the external world, as well as to your own internal operations, because of the impact it's going to have. So that's why we are calling it adaptive manufacturing, and we are saying that, hey, how can Tech Mahindra come in and help in some of these facets? We strongly believe that one cannot do everything, but maybe one can do some parts of it. But whatever we want to do, we want to go deep and we want to do well, and that's our belief in which we are working with our customers, and we are partnering with them across all of these different initiatives which you spoke about. But a great summary and good question, Prasanna.
No, lovely. I think there were so much of interesting perspectives, right? And I can actually talk on and on, especially with the fact about Tesla using vision compute versus the radar system. And I've always been surprised about what does it really take for you guys to just replicate what's been done there, right? I mean, it's already done. And there is some hard resistance with the large manufacturing companies, automotive companies out there to be even adopting the technology today. And I know there's a lot of white papers around it, but I think we are almost at the top of the hour. But what I would like to, before we get on to the Q&A, if there are any questions, both of you were having some similar thoughts about 3 to 5 years of being autonomous. And I will probably start with Peter. If you were to write a job description for the 2028 CIO in manufacturing, what would be the top 3 requirements in your view, Peter? You can put yourself there, or if you want to hire a CIO, I will leave it to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's going to be a very demanding job. So, number one, actually, I think is going to be culture. So whether you're dealing with a partly agentic workforce, and if you read the really sort of far out thinkers, your traditional organogram or structure or team composition and whether it's software-based agentic AI activities, or whether it's shop floor-based humanoids and machines, that team is going to be non-human, right? And of course, I think there'll always be a human element to it. And the advice I've always given in my courses and books, etc., is you're not going to be replaced by AI. You'll be replaced by someone using AI. So that person, as a CIO, as a leader, understanding what they can get from humans and what they can get from machines, and sort of AI augmented humans, that's going to be a key part of the job description. I think the second other big piece of it, we have a saying at ABB: while culture eats strategy for breakfast. So building the culture, very important, and understanding the communication and the trade-off between humans and non-humans. That's a reality we'll have to deal with. Then he says, our CEO says, culture eats strategy for breakfast, but speed eats synergy for lunch. So the virtual simulation that we spoke about just now, and moving up the value chain, like we've seen in a couple of the questions just now, the ability to move quickly and to take big bets, and to acknowledge mistakes and pull back from those, and take new directions, without having to sort of lose face. Netflix pioneered this idea of learning powerfully from your mistakes and sharing those widely. I think a CIO has to have a healthy dose of vulnerability and willingness to protect the team, to say, look, I'm going to make these calls to support, in partnership with the business, the big bets that we need to make. And the technologies are going to come and go. I don't think a CIO should be sort of certified or deeply qualified. They must have a working knowledge of the landscape that they manage. But that culture and ability to execute would probably be 70-80% of the job description, Prasanna.
Oh, lovely. I think Netflix was a very, very classic example, right? They actually put themselves as a competitor by own themselves, right? I mean, they want to look at them. They want to kill themselves, fail fast. Back in 2012, they want to kill the DVD industry, while the video on demand was nowhere there, and they want to actually capitalize the data, right? So that's perfect. Mani, any quick thoughts before we take up one or two questions, please?
No, I think the only other point which I would want to add to that job description is, the adaptability factor for any individual to really perform that particular role is going to be the most critical skill, I would say, because everything else is something which probably one could change. But if they do not have the resiliency or the effectiveness to adapt, because technology is going to change, your process is going to change, your stakeholders with whom you're going to be working obviously would also go through a change, with the kind of retirements we are seeing, the kind of changes in the workforce which we are seeing. So one needs to be, I would say, physically and mentally ready for the change, right? And as he rightly said, I mean, it's not an easy role today, because it's no longer just a CIO. It's in certain organizations I'm seeing the roles are itself coming together. It's a CIO plus CTO plus a CDO, plus even a chief product officer, all put together. It's actually, sometimes when I meet some of my customers, especially they also today are good friends, and then when we talk one on one, I hear them, they're actually performing multiple roles. It's no longer just one role, right? In the past, these were all distinct, different roles, different people performing. But today, I think that synergy, or I would say that convergence, is happening, and more is expected of them. I think the boards are far more demanding. The business stakeholder is far more demanding. So this individual, whoever is performing this role, has to be far more adaptable to this, so that they're able to truly deliver value to their end customers. So that's the only point I would want to add,
Awesome.
Prasanna.
Awesome. I think a growth mindset is the word. Lovely. I want to be very respectful about one good question I got, Peter, if you can, please. The question is about predictive maintenance to quality control and production planning. Is it is there a risk in all getting over optimized and getting saturated? What's your thought about it?
Yeah, I mean, the question goes on to talk about the human element of the shop floor, and I've been to factories both inside and outside of ABB where you have two parallel production lines, and one has got lots of human workers on it, and then the other is sort of eerily non-human, right? And it's this dark factory idea, and for me, there's pros and cons in both of them. I think any organization will be able to deal with that dilemma if they're growing, right? Because that human knowledge is, I think, going to take a while before it's overtaken. Some believe it'll be quicker, than others. But that knowledge that you've got in those human workers of what their customers really require, what the real issues are, it's that's going to train those machines, right? If you lose that too quickly, the machines can learn for themselves. We've seen that as well. But I certainly see the need for flow through with the human element into the machine. So this point of saturating, with too much automation and intelligence, definitely, if you take just the basic hallucination that we see in a lot of the generative AI solutions and you put that into the shop floor, you could potentially have, some quite difficult situations, which then pushes the pendulum right back. And people say, we're going to chuck AI out and all this automation. And you don't want that to happen. You want the gradual, incremental, continuous learning as key principles for your adoption.
Awesome. I really wish that doesn't stay just in the hallucinated state. And let's all get started with practicing the tagline on engineer to outrun. And this was really fantastic. There are so many questions, guys. Thank you so much for attending today. We'll definitely get all those answered offline. But Peter, thank you for joining, and really looking forward. And Mani, lovely having you today as well, and looking forward for more and more of these. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thanks.
Peter.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Well done, guys.
Bye-bye.
All the best. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.